And we'll start with, if anybody has any questions. And I need to pop my chat out. Nope. Okay, we've been looking at functions, and I hope you had a chance to at least see the Monday night Zoom, because that's where we started with functions. And when you create a function, just a little review, it's define or DEF. So we've really been doing functions since we added main. And the function name, now the way Python wants you to name functions, it should be descriptive of what the function does. But in addition, if it's 2 words, you should use an underscore between the words. So let's do add underscore number. Then in parentheses, whatever parameters you're going to pass, and we're going to go ahead and pass it to, this again is, we're just reviewing what we've already done in the other Zooms. So I'm going to add, I'm just going to call it num1 and num2. Then everything that's indented is part of the function, just like with loops and those things. So this is going to be real simple. I can actually do it in a single line, return num1 plus num2, and that would be the function. Now, I do require comments about the function, so if you, in PyCharm, do 3 apostrophes or 3 quotes, it'll actually double them, and when you enter, it puts the standard format for commenting functions in. If you're using something other than PyCharm, if you use other editors other than PyCharm, it will not necessarily automatically do this for you. So you'd have to do it yourself. And you'd put a comment of what the function does. And then for each of the parameters, these are the values in the parentheses, you would probably want to put a comment there. And if you're returning anything, and I'm going to just say, return the sum of the numbers. So you're documenting it. And that way, 6 months from now, the answer is, or not the answer, but 6 months from now, if you have to go back and look at this program, those comments are going to help you know what it does. Most of you, if you're like me, you can't remember what you had for breakfast last week unless you do the same breakfast every day, much less remember what a program did. And that's where comments come into play. And I've not forced a lot of comments in these programs, but as we start getting more complex, you need to do those comments. So here we've put some minimum comments in. To call a function, and you can actually call a function from within a function if you need to. Here in main, I'm going to call it, but I'm going to say sum, actually I'll say sum1 is equal to add number, and I'm going to pass it 3 and 5 separated by commas. And then I'll print sum, or sum1. When I run it, it prints 8. What it did was it passed or sent the 3 into, and the 5 into add number. The 3 became the variable num1, the 5 the variable num2. It added those together, and then it returned the sum of it. Now, yeah, you say it'd be easier just to add the 2. You're right, but this is showing you how a function works. And you can call that function over and over. And maybe this time, maybe I have z equal 10, and I want to add z to 5. And this time, when it runs it the second time, well, 10 and 15, 5 is 15. So you can run these functions over and over again. Once again, if you go in there and you know, excuse me, if you go in and you are going to use code over and over again, you may have something more complex you're going to use over and over again, create functions. Also, taking a big problem and breaking it down, create functions. So any questions on that little review? We also looked at how, excuse me, we could pass it a list, and we could do things with a list. We looked at returning multiple values, if I can find the one we return multiple values on. Okay, here. And this one where we returned multiple values, it created a tuple or a tuple of those values. Remember that a tuple or a tuple cannot be changed. Once you create it, you can use it, but you can't change it. So if I've got that tuple, I can pass it, I can even pass it a tuple. If I've got that tuple, I can get pieces out of it that's indexed just like a list. So in that tuple, this would be an index value of 0, Bill would be an index value of 1, and cheese 2. So you can pull those individual elements out. You just can't change what's in the tuple. So unlike a lot of languages that restrict you to a single value to be returned, with Python, you can return multiple values. Okay. All right, any questions there? Okay. Now, there are, in addition to passing it values the way we've done, with Python, you can pass it an arbitrary number of values. So I can go in and pass it as many values as I need. So let's come in here, and I'm going to create another function, or a new function, and I'm going to call this arg value, and I'm going to pass it an unknown number of values. Depending on when I call it, I could pass it 1, pass it 3, pass it 12, doesn't matter. And when you do that, you use an asterisk and then a variable name. You'll see in a lot of programs, they'll use the variable name args, but there's nothing that says it has to be args. But I'll go ahead and use that args this time. Normally, I might use something more descriptive of what I'm passing it. And then in that, I can work with it. I'm going to, the first time through this one, I'm just going to print what I get. So you'll see what comes over. And I'm just going to not return anything. So if I call it, I can pass it as many values as I want, separate them by commas here. They could be a mix of numbers and words. Do not do that unless you really know the exact order, or whatever you're doing with it doesn't matter whether they're numbers or strings, because if you start mixing them, you can end up running into some problems. So when I run this one, notice it prints them in parentheses. Printing those numbers in parentheses says what it received was a tuple. So I sent it those values, and it came into the function as a tuple. So I can't change any of those values as such. I couldn't change, say, args of 3. I can print it. Args of index 3, which is the 1, the last value, but I can't change it. I could not change any of those because it's immutable or unchangeable, but I can work with it. Any questions so far? Well, let's say I pass it, and I could call it again and pass it other things, but let's say I pass it this tuple, and I just want to print the items out one at a time. I could use a for loop, maybe for x in args, and print say x equal x, and it will print each of those keyword or each of those tuple items one after another, because each time it goes through the loop, it pulls off the next one. So it prints them one at a time. Now, suddenly you're probably thinking, that's exactly what we did with lists on it. And that's true. Certain things, and a lot of the things you did with lists, you can do with tuples. What you can't do with tuples is change them, but reading the values, all those things, you can pull out of a list. So I was able to do that. And if I were to call it again, and let me set a couple of variables. I can call it again, and I can call it this time with the variable names, comma, B, comma, C, comma, D, and it will pass those variables and copy them into those arguments. Again, probably what you expect. So the second time through, it prints the 1, 3, 5, 5, and 7, or the 3, 5, 5, and 77. And I can actually don't have to have the same number of arguments. I'm going to send A again. And it says A. So I can pass it using this arguments. I can pass it a random or arbitrary number of values. Questions? The other thing I can do is I can actually mix it. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to say, just so it's a different data type, I'm going to have a name and then the args. This time I have to, when I pass it, I have to, the first thing has to be what's going to be the name, and I'll pass it a string. I'm picking a string here, instead of name, let's say Joe. Pick a string here just so you see it's a different data type. I'm going to leave this second one as is, and I'm going to print the variable name. The first time through, it printed the Joe. Joe became the name. The second time through, it actually printed the 3, which was A, where it would have done the name, because anything that is not one of these arguments has to go first. So I could have 2 or 3 of those. I can have name, address, or whatever, and then those args, but these variable length arguments have to go last. So if I change this to Bill, now when I run it, Bill will be treated there. So you can mix them as long as your variable length arguments come last. There are times where that works out well. If I had a series where maybe a user had entered different amounts of data, or I'm pulling data from a data source where I don't know how many items of data that source has. Not unusual if I'm downloading data from the internet. I don't know how many items that data source has. I can process them again without knowing how many there are. So questions on the keyword arguments. Again, that one, the times I've used it have been when I've downloaded data from some other source, so I don't know. Most of the time when I'm creating a function, I know how many items I need to pass it. But there are times where I don't know, and if I don't know how many items, using these argvals work. Questions there? Well, before we do the last things that you can pass with, or the last way we can pass things to a function, I need to introduce to you the dictionary. And a dictionary is a set of what we'll call keyword pairs. So a dictionary item has a key. I said keyword, I should have said key value, and a value. So a dictionary item is a key and a value. And if you think of a database, most of you are probably in SQL. Each record in SQL is really a key value pair. You have the key as, say, name, and its value, Bob. You might have city, and its value, Blountville. And so it's a series of these key value pairs. The first thing is the key. The second is the value. We go back here. We used square brackets to define a list. We used curly brackets or parentheses to define a tuple. We're going to use curly brackets to define a dictionary. So the way you enclose them tells which it is. So I'm going to go ahead and create a dictionary. Call it D1. and I use the curly brackets, and then I put the key, a colon, and the value, then a comma, the next item, and the key, and its value, and then the key again, and so I go in here and set my keys and values. And why have I got curly brackets on those? If I got a, or is it equal on this? Let's see, it may be equal. Nope, it doesn't like the equal. Even the key, I think I have to put in quotes before the colon. Okay. So I created a dictionary. I can print the dictionary. Zip was a class, and that's why it wasn't giving me the quote. But yeah, I have to put the key in quotes as well. And I that's one of the things I tend to forget. And so now I've got this dictionary. It's got a name is the key, Mary's the value, city's the key, Bluff City's the value, zip is the key, 37618 is the value. Now, in this case, it's treating 37618 as a number. If you're doing zip codes, you really should, the zip code should always be considered a string, because you could have the zip 9, which would be 37618-1234, or in other countries, there are letters in it. It's a little bonus material. So I can create these dictionaries. When I've got a dictionary, I can work with individual elements in a dictionary. So I can print name, I'm sorry, not name, D1, and in square brackets name. And I probably need that in quotes again. Yeah, let's try it. D1 name. Yeah. And when I do that, now it prints Mary. Got confused on my variables there. D1 is the name of the dictionary, and where we've indexed before with 0, 1, 2, 3 for the position, now you index based on the name of the item. You cannot have keys that are the same. You can have multiple items in the dictionary with the same value, but I could not have 2 items in the dictionary with the key name. Could not have 2 items in the dictionary with the key city. Could not have 2 with the key zip. I could have, say, a name and a name 1, both with a value of Mary. Okay? That makes sense to everybody? So here, these are dictionaries, and so they're key value pairs. You've got a key and a value with it. And by using dictionaries, we can group things together. Again, think of these very similar to a row of a spreadsheet, or a row of a database more likely, but even a row of a spreadsheet where you've got column headings. Each item in that database has a key, which is whether it's name, street, city, and a value for it in each row. Same thing here. One of the things when you're, again, reading data, and Python does have libraries that will let you read from all of the major databases. I can read from MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, any of those, and I can query those and then work with the data. When I query them, I get back a dictionary for each row, and then I can work with it there. So that is your introduction to a dictionary. And we can use dictionaries to pass things to a function as well. I'm going to stick with that dictionary. And I'm going to create a function. And I'm going to do KW vals. And the way you tell it you're going to do a dictionary, and this is another term you'll hear, they're keyword arguments. And a lot of the documentation will do KW args. I'll use that this time. I normally would not. I would use something more descriptive, but you put 2 asterisks, double asterisk, KW args. But you can call it anything you want. And I'm just going to print the dictionary the first time. So it'll come in as KW args. So I've created that dictionary up here from before. I call the function by the name of the function, and I'm going to pass it D1 in this case. When I run it, error. KW vals takes 0 positional args, but 1 was given. It's not an indent. I'm passing it a dictionary. I should be able to pass it the dictionary that way. What am I doing wrong? Let's see. Oh, it doesn't like that at all, which I didn't think it would. All right, what am I doing? Let's see. Let me check my syntax. Probably something little. Oh. Let me go back and let's pass it this way, but take I get it. I've got it here. if I'm going to have, I should have been able to pass it just the dictionary. I'm not sure what's going on, but if you do these individually, it's the key equal. I took Mary out of quotes. Okay. I'll have to look up the syntax on sending it the dictionary directly because I'm missing something there. And I'm just not seeing it right now. But here I give it the keyword arguments this way. Key equals value. It's an equal there. And here's where I think there's an inconsistency in the way that they handle things in Python, where the dictionary, you do the colons to create the dictionary, but here you use the equals if you're doing it in the parentheses. So now you see that it actually brings it in as a dictionary.
If you put equals D1, would it bring the dictionary in?
No.
No, and there I'll have to look up the syntax on sending the dictionary that way. But if I put them in this format, then I end up with a dictionary that comes in, and I can work with different elements in the dictionary. So what did I call it? KW args or vals, no args, KW args of zip, and I can pull out just individual items. So I can send it key value pairs like a dictionary. And again, the number of those is arbitrary. So again, those are different ways of passing things, and I'll figure out what I was doing wrong passing it the dictionary directly. One of the other things we can do when we pass it key value pairs, I can still loop through. I could do something like 4x equals the length, but since this is a dictionary, I can actually pull both the key and the value. So I can say for key comma value in, if I just do KW args, I'm going to get an error. So I've already told you I'm going to get an error. And it says too many values to unpack KW. So what I actually have to do is use a method that's a method for dictionaries, and that method allows me to basically iterate through a dictionary. And so we tell it we want to go in and we want to pull from that dictionary an individual item each time. And I'm going to get this backwards because there's also an items that works a little different, and I probably got them backwards. Nope, yep. So let's try. Oh, no. All right, let me look it up. I should have had this up on my screen to make sure I got the syntax right. Let's try it. Maybe it is items, and item is the one yeah, it's items. I was thinking the item method is a little bit different. So when I tell it keyword dot items, open close parentheses, each time it goes through the for loop, it pulls the next item out, but it does both the key and the value. So I end up with the key in this case, the variable key. I can call it anything I want. And the value in the variable value. So it pulls those out and then I can work with them in any way I want. So in this case, I just pulled them out and printed them down here. Maybe I've got certain things that are always going to be sent and I want to do something with. So maybe I've got an if statement. If key equals city, double equal. So looking at the key, not the actual value, maybe I want to print you live in, and whatever the city is. So you live in Bluff City. So I can, by pulling that key value pair, I can work with those. Maybe I have a series of ifs depending on what was entered, city, state, zip, things like that, name, and then anything that's not part of that, I could go in and have an else that handles that. Again, this a lot of times is when you're going to be pulling things from a database and such. So if there's any questions on passing keyword arguments. And of course, I could return something if I needed to. If I wanted to return the value, I could.
Are you using these to interact with database? Like
you
when
could,
you said
yes.
you wrote the program to pull the info out of the database for the courthouse or whatever?
Right. From the database, or it may not be a database. Maybe we're pulling data from another data source. I don't know if you are familiar with XML or any of those. But a lot of data sources provide you with data in a format called XML. And so you can pull that data come on, go back. Get it. Now it's maybe too big. There. Where an example of an XML file, you've got greater thans and less than separating. And so you've got a part, and the part has a name, a description, in this case. So there's only those two things in this particular XML item, but you could bring that in and you could parse it, turn it into a dictionary item, and work with it. In addition to XML, there's JSON. And we're going to look, I'm going to introduce you to JSON just a tad, but a little later. Let me see, find an example. You don't want to see this part. Nope. Yeah, this may. So JSON, you start with curly brackets, and JSON looks like a dictionary where you've got a nested dictionary item. So we've got a dictionary item book here, and inside of the book, we've got another dictionary item, the square bracket, that has an ID, a dictionary, that's an ID, language, editor, and things. And so we can have multiple elements of a book, not quite exactly the dictionary syntax, but each of these elements separated by curly brackets has an ID, in this case, ID, language, and addition. And we can go through and with, again, a database, or not a database, a series of functions, we can go and parse that. You can export data as JSON from SQL databases, but a lot of websites that allow you to download data give you the ability to download the data either in XML or JSON format. And so if I'm downloading data, for example, if I go to NOAA, I can download weather data from NOAA and I can download it in JSON format. Once I've got that data downloaded in JSON format, then I can process it. There is a, one of the things we're going to use probably the last week, there is a like joke of the day or joke database. It's all in JSON format that is somebody put up there and designed it for you to use to practice downloading, querying it to download JSON data from there and process. So we're gonna, that will probably be the very last week. There probably will not be any assignments on it, but we'll probably talk about that the last week. So yes, using the key value pairs and processing them allows us to process data from databases or other sources. All right, questions?
Mr. Perry?
Yeah.
In the chat column, I sent some code where you could pass the dictionary to a function you might want to look at.
Okay. Where'd I do with my chat? I guess it got covered up. Well, I guess it closed it somehow. There we go. See, it got minimized. Okay. Let me. And I was not going to give extra credit over the BR549, which some of you evidently know, but I take it, a couple of you know. But there is an assignment coming up with a list that if you know the source of the data, the list data, then you'll get extra credit. Okay, so,
Yes, it just makes us old if we know what that means.
yeah. So we got to do the double star when we do the dictionary. Okay.
It works, so I assume, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I've still got, let me get rid of this part. Okay, so yeah, so you got, yeah, when you pass it the dictionary, you've got to do the double star, and that's what I couldn't remember. And then you're actually telling it there, you're passing it the dictionary. So thanks. Okay.
Also, I saw where, like down there in the functions for your parameter,
Yeah.
if you put star and then curly brackets, then your dictionary definition will work as well. Instead of doing like you had it, name equals
Yeah.
So it would keep to the same format that you use when you create your dictionary in the main,
Yeah.
using a colon.
Right. Yeah. That works as well. Yeah. Okay. Good. Any questions on functions so far? Using the keyword arguments, I use more than the variable length arguments, mainly because a lot of what you end up doing is pulling from databases or other data sources. And if you do that, then you need to understand or bring things in as keyword arguments for your functions to process it. I don't know if we'll do it next week or the week after, probably the middle of next week. If we don't start it Monday, we're going to start looking at actually reading and writing data files. And again, reading data files, whether, in addition to database, depending on how they're formatted, we may end up getting a dictionary, and that's where I use the keyword arguments more. If you're dealing with a lot of data that may be from a database or other things, there are some libraries that are out there to help you process that data, depending, and especially if you're going to do statistical work on the data, there is NumPy and Scrappy and a couple of other libraries that they're really designed for doing big data analysis. You can work with them with a small set of data, small database, but they're actually designed so you can work with millions of records. And this is, I think, one of the reasons Python has become very popular, is the ability to go in and analyze large data items on it. Okay, any questions? I probably got your heads about ready to explode right now.
I have a question.
Okay.
When do the user-defined functions come into effect? Like which labs do you want us to use the user-defined functions?
The labs I'm going to be posting today or tomorrow, when I get them posted, will have the functions. You can start using them now if you want, but when we get the labs that I'm waiting on my editor to get back from editing. I've got a student worker that is right now trying to edit out my typos and things on stuff, and they're a little slow getting back to me. I thought they were going to get them back to me yesterday. If they don't get them back to me today, I'm going to go ahead and post them, and they will tell you, the first few, they're going to actually tell you what functions to create, not let you decide.
Okay, so anything after lab 28.
Yeah.
After what that, okay.
Thank you. There will be probably 6 or 8 more labs, I think, maybe 10 for the rest of the semester. Probably I'm going to have a couple of them that I'm going to call bonus labs that are optional, and they'll just be bonus points for those that need it. If it's typical, the ones that need the bonus points won't bother, and the ones that don't need the bonus points will. I guess most of you guys are going to probably do, if I do the bonus, and then the ones that haven't bothered showing up, and I've had a few that haven't shown up to a single Zoom session. Those are the ones that probably could use the bonus points on it. Okay, any questions?
I know I could use the bonus points.
Speaking of showing up for the Zoom session, Kayla Hauser messaged me this morning. I don't know if she contacted you, but she's having problems with her Wi-Fi at home. And I'm trying to help her get it straightened out this afternoon, but she wasn't able to Zoom in.
She didn't message me, but I had this morning, I didn't know if we were going to be able to do it today, because this morning, and last night, my not Wi-Fi, but my actual internet connection was kicking out. Evidently, BTES was having some issues, and they had some last night, and it cleared up for a while. And then this morning, about 8 o'clock, I was having them. They cleared them up about 9:30, so luckily we were able to do this. I think some of the ISPs are being overwhelmed with the amount of traffic, especially Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype, all that traffic, because we've got so many people now working from home. And I think that may have been what the issue was with BTES. They were just having issues with handling the load.
Well, let me bounce this off of you real quick, if you don't mind. Her router is only allowing one device to connect at a time.
Ooh.
She said to be able to get on, she has to disconnect every device in the house except for her school computer. And I guess there's other kids there that the mom's watching and whatnot, and so they're needing bandwidth to keep them occupied too. I don't know, but
if it's only allowing one device, I would almost start by just resetting the router. Go back to factory defaults and try it, because that sounds, if that's the case, that sounds like the router's having issues rather than the ISP.
Right. I'm going to try to work with her on it once we finish this Zoom up, but I don't know, maybe, I was thinking maybe somebody plugged the Cat5 cable in wrong and it was bridging. If they plugged into one of the
and if it had been working and isn't now, though, you wonder. But that's also a possibility if in a hardwired connection they plug something in wrong too. But check all the physical connections first, probably.
All right, appreciate it.
All right. Well, if there are any other questions. Well, in that case, I'll go ahead and stop my sharing and recording, and we will see you guys next week. Feel free, use the message board, the discussion board, and I am checking email, not as much on the weekend, but I'm checking it several times a day. All right, we'll see.